Welcome to the Ghost Heads Nerd Talk Podcast. Interviews and conversations about nerd culture from all around the world. Now here are your three Ghostbuster hosts, Joe, Rain, and Val. Enjoy the show.
Hey, Rain, you want to do the intro today?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ghost Head Nerd Talk Podcast. I am your co-host, Rain, and to my other side I have...
And I'm the one and only Ghostbuster Joe. And welcome to episode 92 of Ghost Head Nerd Talk. And man, what a journey we've been on so far. So, Rain, we have a guest we're having on, a fellow podcaster. Introduce him.
Yeah, awesome guy. Writes his own stories and has his own show called the Running Chills Podcast. Awesome, like a radio show type ghost stuff. He's here to talk about it with us, and yeah, it's some really, really cool stuff. I thought it'd be great, especially with Halloween. Welcome our guest, Mr. Rip Gavin.
Oh, Rip Graven.
Graven, sorry, my bad.
Now you know. Now Rain knows now how it feels to be Joe Panther III, that other guy, that other persona. Like you're gonna laugh, Rip. It's like I have to literally drill myself. Like I'm like using a drill in my head, or I have to go like red velvet. As soon as that thing goes live, and then my intro is going for Dudes at Ringside, and I'm like, go to the intro, and then I'm like, and now and you give a warning, Dudes at Ringside, welcome to. Introduce yourself. I have the name. I'm looking at the name. The name isn't before the title. Dudes at Ringside. I'm looking at it. It's not like somebody, like a producer's on my computer going, I'm the killer. And I'm like, and now introduce yourself. And he's like, God damn it.
It's good.
You suck, Joe Panther. You can't do this anymore. Can't do this to everybody. So, Rip, if our Ghostbusters fans, the Ghost Head Talk, the nerd crew, is not familiar with your podcast and how you got into the community, introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, my background, short version, is that I've been a Ghostbuster fan since growing up as a kid. I actually had the remember the particle thrower that was blue with the foam tip, and you squeeze it and it'd pop right out? I was that kid. My ghosts were cardboard because I couldn't afford the plastic ones. Anyway, but anyway, having said that, yeah, I remember. I think I had. Man, it's sad to admit this. I remember playing with an actual. I had the plastic Ecto, and I had the like Hasbro figures. The ones that would like change their faces or whatever.
Oh, the scary ones.
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember the name of them, but yeah,
ones, I think they're called.
Yes. So I had this, and then like along with the Ninja Turtles and like every other awesome thing. One day, my parents were like, "Garage sale," and I was like, "What?" It's all gone. So now as an adult, you walk through like antique store stuff and you're like, oh, I had that. And you want how much for it? Anyway. Yeah. So that was kind of my like I would say my Ghostbuster fandom. I ran into Rain and the Portland Ghostbuster unit last year. I was doing book tour at Rose City Comic Con. That was one of my stops. And I ran into them and saw the Ecto and everything and was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I found out through talking with all of them that they're 501c3 and that we were doing charity work and whatnot. And I thought it took me all of probably like a day to like put two and two together and go, I write horror fiction. Like I'm out doing promotion stuff. Like how cool would it be to basically get to cosplay and dress up as a Ghostbuster, and like that kind of be like the nonprofit side of some of what I do. It just felt like a really good marriage, and also a really great community. I mean, I'm not trying to wax on the Ghostbusters too much, but having said that, like the folks that are in the Portland Ghostbuster unit are really, really wonderful people. Like I've started to get to know most of them over the last year, and I'm actually like, I just made a ton of friends. Like it was fantastic. So
We're like a big family.
yeah, it's like a big family. Yeah. So so that's how I got in, and that's how me and Rain know each other, and kind of went from there.
Also, he does rock the coolest Ghostbuster 2. Only one on our team that is in the Ghostbuster 2 uniform. All of us who typically wear the OG.
Get to show you uni.
A little bit of Ghostbuster bragging, but so I made a locker.
What?
And in my Ghostbuster locker is the uniforms
Too.
It's so cool.
all the rest of it. So anyway, I was like, I don't want like my wife's like, I don't want a mess of gear. And so I'm like, but we could put it in a Ghostbuster locker, and then it's like the movies. Anyway, so anyway, so that's how kind of all that came to be. Running Chills is the book that I wrote. It's basically like I really had like a passion for like goosebumps and scary stories to tell in the dark when I was growing up. That was my vibe. That was really the thing that I was into. And actually, a fun story. My parents got really worried because I was like in 4th grade and I was writing stories down. And instead of my teacher looking at that and going, "Oh wow, we have a future writer among us," they were like, "This child's writing horrific things." And the answer was like, "Take all the books away." And so I literally, like, all of my Goosebumps collection was like taken overnight because I wrote. Okay, this is gonna sound really. My very first fiction story. Here it is. Picture this: Pirates of the Caribbean, kid riding the ride, pirates come alive and are not animatronic, and then like accidentally shoot someone in the boat. That's the most I wrote in the story. It was a story, but it was like in 4th grade. It was like, we don't write those kind of things. Like, so
today it's like tame today compared to like what's written now.
I know. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, long story short, that was my like I remember as a kid, I watched Poltergeist. As kids, you were latchkey, you'd turn the TV on and do whatever while your parents were away, and so I remember probably at like 5 or 6, I was watching Poltergeist, and that's very like creepy for 5 or 6-year-olds to like immediately. But I was like, this is cool. Like I loved it. Like I liked it. It was cool. So yeah. So anyway, so I got into writing fiction and whatnot, and then I've had like a traditional career, like where I was in marketing and all those kind of things. But then around the pandemic, I'd finally kind of said, okay, we've got the time. Like I want to actually like tell some stories and things that I'd been thinking about. And so I wrote a book called Running Chills. It's 13 short horror stories. And basically I did all the illustrations as well as wrote the stories. I would say it's a little more mature than Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So it's kind of like, for those that loved that, this is more of a grown-up version. But it's still very approachable. I would say like my youngest reader is 10, and most of my readers are teens or older, if that makes sense. But yeah, the whole thing is illustrated, so I'll show you kind of a couple examples. But yeah, the whole thing is illustrated. It's very fun. I did custom artworks throughout the entire piece. And so let's see if I can show you what a page looks like.
Oh, cool.
It's very fun, spooky book.
Cute.
And anyway, so it crosses a lot of genres because it's horror, but it's like one story set in the Wild West, one set in the 80s, like one set in medieval times, like, so it's just like one of those really fun where you can kind of give a short story read and not have to like commit to reading like a whole book. So I did that. And then after I did that book, I did a kind of a spinoff, which was a magazine called Haunters Monthly. This is a magazine for ghosts, by ghosts. They give each other advice. So you end up with like stories where they're taking credit for the lunar landing. You have stories where they're doing like a Dear Abby column where it's called Ghastly Gossip, and they give each other advice on like how to haunt mortals.
Love that.
There's ads for various afterlife services.
Like,
so I mean, there's some funny stuff. There's classifieds because apparently people are looking for love in the afterlife.
Well,
I mean,
I guess that's where Beetlejuice finds his next job.
It's very funny. Like, and so like if this was like, creepy, like fun pop culture short story horror, this is like the absurdity of like just complete silliness and just having a great time. And then when I wrote the book, I ended up coming up with stories that I pulled because I was like, okay, actually, I think these could be like way darker and way more fun and like way deeper than the short stories they were. So I pulled them, and then that's what I'm turning into full novels right now. That's what I'm currently working on, is like what's coming next after Running Chills. So Running Chills, we decided we were going to do like an audiobook, and we talked about that a little bit, and we bounced that around, and I was like, okay, but it's like short stories, and there's like 13 of them. What if we did like episodes? Like, what if it was more like a podcast, like, episodic content versus something where like the narrator's just like, and this happened and that happened, and just kind of read out loud. And so kind of stumbled into the old audio drama format. I ended up picking up a couple of records of various like older productions from back in the heyday of radio, of just like how horror was done like back in the day. Like I would say almost like even pre-Vincent Price like stuff, like The Shadow, stuff like that. And so really started picking up on those things, looking through that, and then looked through the podcasting of like what people were doing and like what I felt they were doing right and what I felt maybe they could use a little bit better. Like maybe we don't need to hear cop sirens while you're trying to drive in a podcast, like, things like that. So we ended up producing it. We got 4 episodes out right now, about 2 hours of content. We're currently recording. We got another 12 episodes we plan to drop over the next year. We took a bit of a hiatus because we're producing it all in-house, but it's very fun. Rain is currently in talks with us to be a character in one of the stories that's coming up. So it's a lot of fun. But that's the Running Chills podcast, and it's funny because I thought originally that the podcast was going to be like, oh yeah, this other thing, like here's this like free sample of the book. And what's starting to become is people are really into the storytelling on the podcast, and by extension, oh yeah, they'll buy a book to like support the continuation of the podcast. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's kind of a fun like world we found ourselves where we're like, wow, we created something really awesome. Okay, now we've got to keep it going. So that's a little introduction.
Yeah, like
That's
with
awesome.
like podcasts. How have you ever had a fan like contact you from a different country, like on any of your socials, going, "Oh my god"?
No, not from another country. Although with the analytics, we can kind of see, and sometimes you'll get stuff, and I'm like, wow, like, okay, like I didn't do any advertising there. I did have a fun scenario at a book tour I did a couple weeks ago. I was down in LA to promote for the first time, and I haven't really done Los Angeles before. So I released Running Chills last September, so it's only been out a year, really. And the podcast as well has only really just started to kind of come out and do its thing. Like we did the first like 3 or 4 episodes as a test, like proof of concept. Could we make this as good as we wanted? And we did. And then we're like, okay, now we need actors. Now we need like more people and like an actual like production of this, right? So I'm down in LA and I'm promoting it, and somebody came walking by and like whipped their phone out, and they were just like, "This you?" And they like pointed to the podcast, and I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Oh, I've been listening." And I'm like, "How? How did you know?" like how do you know about this? And they were like, "Oh, a friend of a friend online." And I'm like, "Okay, we must be doing something right."
Right. That's awesome.
And this is what the if anybody wants to hear a freeze frame, you can scan the QR code and go to it. But yeah, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, iHeart, YouTube, all the fun stuff.
I'm trying to get back on. I'm trying to get myself all the shows or this show on back on iHeartRadio, but I know it's going to be a journey to get, because I thought I wasn't going to get and this show or dudes back on Spotify, and it'll just like clicked on it's up. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, maybe we have to wait a week. Somebody used to tell me, oh, it takes a week to get. You send the thing, they'll tell you, oh no, you can't do it, or else any email maybe. Some people are like, no, you just click, choose if there's curses in it, see if it has any odd things. No, they're just like, go do it, whatever, go.
Yeah. It's amazing how much the walls around that have come down over the last 10 years. Like, I mean, you know, it used to be this real laborious process, but now I'm using Spotify for podcasters just because I'm bootstrap and just we're figuring it out as we go. And Spotify, with the exception of YouTube, pretty much allows me to just push it to everywhere and give them all the data that they need for the episodes. YouTube's a little unique and kind of selfish. They want you to do it all yourself. So with that one, I couldn't like retroactively add YouTube, and Spotify's platform, interestingly enough, doesn't allow you an option to add YouTube. You have to actually go to YouTube, create your own profile on YouTube, and then be like, yeah, there's the RSS, go get it. And then it pulls it down, and then YouTube's like, yeah, but tell me about it, because I don't believe their data. So you have to go back and fill everything out a second time.
It's crazy to think like when it comes to like putting your stuff on Spotify, you could see it because you go to, as you say, you go to the YouTube, the Spotify thing and see how many people watch, like listen. But when it comes to YouTube's being weird lately because I had a bunch of episodes on like Ghost Head Talk, and then I'll look at dudes about the same episode band of views, and then it went back on today, and all the views got cut.
Yeah, there's stuff on the back end going on. I don't know. We used to deal with this problem a lot with a lot of the different social media metrics too. It's like, you know, they make a couple tweaks to an algorithm and oops, there goes, you know, the data sets I was about to show a client when I was doing marketing or whatever. And you're like, oh, I swear we got this much, but it's gone now. Like, you know,
it's like the episode, like the thing on South Park. It's like, and it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway,
where do you get your inspiration from your stories?
Oh yeah. So a lot of it, it's kind of a mix. Some of it is like real stuff, things that like either I've experienced or I know about others experiencing that kind of became the like seed that grew a story from it. Or it was just pure fiction and just pure fun. But I try to always like wrap themes into my work. So part of that is there's always what you see at the story level, and then there's like almost like, but what's the meaning of this? A great example of it is I have a story called The Woman Within the Darkness. It's actually the very first episode of the podcast. So you can actually go listen to this episode if you're curious. And it's about a woman who starts to see ghosts on the subway. And it's an analogy for mental health. In essence, she starts seeing ghosts on the subway, and to give the story away, basically, every time she sees this ghost, the ghost puts its hand on somebody's shoulder, and it's usually right before they jump in front of the train. And she starts seeing this ghost, and it's like, oh no, it's going to happen again. Oh no, it's going to happen again. And at some point, the ghost kind of like singles her out and like points her out of a crowd and starts following her. And now she's like, whoa, I don't want this thing. You know, what is it? She goes to a therapist. She goes through all that. She, you know, supposedly turns her life around. All those things look great. And then at the end of the story, we find that there was a tourist photo taken on a ferry that was, you know, shuttling people in New York City. And she's on the bow of the ferry. And this tourist photo has the ghost with its hand on her back. And it was about a minute before she jumps off the ferry and into the water. And I wrote the story as an analogy, just because I felt like the mental health crisis is you just never really know what people are dealing with. Like you just never know, someone may appear totally fine on the outside and in great spirits, and yet inside they're dealing with a lot. And so, in essence, the ghost story is that it's a spooky ghost story for sure. But at the same time, there's that sub level of but what we're really talking about is mental health and how you just don't know. The craziest thing that happened in real life around that, and it was really hard. It was I wrote that story because I had dealt with a little bit of depression and some struggles when I had worked in New York City back in the day in my career. And I had kind of jokingly told my wife, I was it felt like I was writing that story and it felt like Brianna jumped off the bow of that ferry, but I stayed on the bridge of it. It was that's the kind of things that were going on in my life at the time. Well, I'm talking with, everyone as I'm developing this story. And then literally I'm in editing on this thing and I get a call and my nephew had committed suicide.
Oh my God.
And I didn't even know that he was struggling with stuff like that, and so you just never know. You just don't know. And so anyway, I don't want to bring us down real low, but having said that, that's an example of the kinds of things that I cover in the book. And not everything's that serious or that weighty, but other examples are personal stories, things that I've experienced. One example, actually, the story that we're thinking about having Rain guest star in as an actor is about a haunted lake. Ooh. And I love a summer ghost story. I love those camp whatever ghost stories where all the kids are together and they're like, oh, it's not real. Yeah, it is. No, it's not. And then it's real. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And so so I have this story of a bunch of kids who are at a haunted lake with a huge history. And, the kids are like, nah, that's baloney. That's just not real. And they end up deciding they're going to go break into this island that's in the middle of this lake that's been kind of marked off by the government. You don't go on this. We put a fence around it to protect the public kind of thing, because there were all these drownings and things. And the kids decide they're going to break into it. And then there's an old estate that's on the actual island in the middle of the lake. And it's a whole haunted house experience, the whole 9 yards. And so that story came out of two different experiences of my own. One was that I and my wife, Rain and I are in Portland, just west of Portland. There's a lake called Henry Hagg Lake. And my wife and I were on the lake in our kayaks, and we got home after a really great day, and on the news somebody had drowned in the lake while we were there, literally in the area we were, but we weren't in the same area at the same time. Wow. And when my wife and I go out on kayaks, we always were oh, let's bring snacks and lunch, and then let's go find some isolated cove somewhere, pull in and eat our snacks, and then get back on the water. And that's kind of how we do our kayaking when we're out. So based on currents and wind and whatnot, I remember when we were watching the news, I was like, dude, if this guy went missing and he drowned, I bet the currents would take him to where we were. Honestly, just based on geography and just the way it was going. And then, my wife and I were talking, and I was like, that would have been way creepy. And we just kind of dismissed it. Ooh, kind of thought we don't want to think about it. Right. So then later in the day, the police come forward, and sure enough, they found his body exactly where we had been in the prior day.
Oh my God.
I mean, we must have been passing ways. He's under the surface and we're over the surface. Kind of and so that was oh, right. And so then I started delving into, right about that time, there was a loss in Las Vegas. They had drained one of the lakes, or lakes that got really low. And I started finding barrels that were dumped, people that were hits for I don't know, the cartel or mafia or something. And they were identifying them from their Nikes they were wearing. They were oh, these people have been in canisters in the bottom of the lake since the 80s. And it was crazy, right? So all that's going on. And I start digging into Hag Lake here, and I'm going, okay, well, how many people have died at this lake? Like, and I start doing my research, and I come to find out at Hag Lake, there's been like over 50 deaths.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
50?
50.
Wow.
Like, and
Recorded
the
anyway.
reason, most of the reason is because they're man-made lake, the bottom of the lake is really muddy and it's very sticky because it's not naturally occurring. So what people don't realize is they're out swimming and they go down to the bottom and you can actually get like and like stick your foot in and get stuck and then you can't get back up.
Ooh, like a slime almost.
Yeah, and so like there was this is a true story. You want to hear a true ghost, or not a ghost story, but a true like tragedy story of Hag Lake. So when I was doing my research, I found out about a whole family. There were like 3 generations, like grandparents, parents, and kids. They go out, they rent like one of those like party barge things, right? They go out, they're like on the shore, you know, they kind of dock it right off the shore, and they bring their lawn chairs and their water coolers and all this stuff. They have their little dog running around, towels, beach balls, etc., and they're all in the water swimming. Next day, you know, patrol comes out. There's the boat, no one's there. All their stuff is still on the shore. Dogs running back and forth barking, but no family. Where'd this whole family of 3 generations go? They found them in the mud, in the water, like under the surface. They just like, so apparently one of them got stuck. The others all swam in without life jackets, trying to save them, and they all got trapped. And this was this is like literally a lake that. So what ended up happening was they ended up
there.
Yeah. No, so
No
they ended up coming forward, and I think, I don't know if it was the county or the state or whatever. You'll see when you go to that lake, there's a huge installation with a warning and then free life jackets. And it's like, please take one.
Wow.
Do not swim without this, because this is. So that was like the basis level for like, okay, like a haunted lake, like people drowning in it. Like, granted, I'm fictionalizing a lot here, like to create a haunted lake, but that's kind of where the idea kind of came from. And then I was listening to your episode. I was at episode 90 where you guys were talking about your personal experiences.
Oh, the ghost stories. Yeah.
So I was listening to that, and I thought I'd throw one in for you. So the same story. So this haunted lake story influence. When I was, you know, the mansion that's in the story on the island that the kids go into and is haunted was actually kind of made off of an experience I had when I was in college. I, like I said, you know, I've always been interested in horror and all those things. So I took an intro to film class where we were just kind of like, you know, one of those college classes where we're like, here's a camcorder, go. Like, you know, you just go and do your thing. And so we were told to write scripts. And so we all wrote a script for our own thing. And one of my buddies in the class wrote a script about a haunted, like, brother, sister scenario or whatever. And I was like, man, that's awesome. And then I wrote my own thing. And the teacher, basically the instructor, chose his script and was like, okay, I want you to make this horror movie and all that. But you wrote all this dialogue. You know, she points to me and she's like, you're going to direct it. And you're going to direct all the shots. You're going to be the gaffer. You're going to be and she hands out the roles. And she's like, here's the deal. You have to take his script and you have to reinterpret it. I want it to be a silent film.
Oh, shit.
Like, oh, okay. It has to be a 5-minute silent horror film. Okay, well, we're getting into rewrites, you know. So it's just kind of like, all right. So we go to do this thing, and at the time I lived in Fresno, California. So Central Valley, like middle of nowhere. Like, not to discourage my Fresno State Bulldog alumni, but we're kind of, you know, it's not the most desirable place to be in the United States. And anyway, so we're out there, and there is this old, what's it called? It's not an asylum, but it was a where people went to die.
You
know what I'm talking about?
Hospice,
like a hospice facility almost.
Yeah, but it's that kind of I forget the official name for it. I'm gonna kick myself now. Anyway,
thinking of one.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So
Rain knows what I mean. I can't say the name of it.
Sanitarium. That was the word I was looking for. Sanitarium or sanatorium.
Sanitarium. Okay.
You're already dead when you go to the sanitarium.
Yeah. So here's this thing. This house was like this historic mansion. It was you probably can Google it online. It was called Wolf Manor back in the day. And it had a whole hospital wing that had been like added onto it back in the asbesto days. And like, I mean, this thing was expansive, but basically it became like let's just send people who had ailments here and we're going to just, do whatever kind of malpractice we're going to do to try and fix them and let them do their and it was just, it was awful. It was an awful place. A lot of people died. And they had this basement area where they would just stack bodies. And then like the morgue would like come and pick up stacks of people from this place. I mean, it was like a bad place. They knocked down all the hospital wings, but the building fell into disrepair. And there was a guy who owned it and was like, well, I'm going to turn it into a haunted hotel. And then like that fell through because of like regulations and like he didn't have the real money. He had enough money to buy the place, but he didn't have the money to fix it. Like it was just like one of those like sore spots on the city. So the city gets involved and the city's like, this is a sore on our neighborhood and we'll knock it down if you don't fix it. It was like one of those stories. So all this is going on. And I'm in this film class and we're supposed to shoot a horror movie. And I'm like, well, where better to shoot a horror movie than in this place? Come on. Now, apparently, you can actually find this episode. There was a Ghost Hunters, I believe, episode done at this place. So you can actually find it and watch it and see what it was in the inside. But anyway, so I reach out to the guy. I'm just like, college student, a cavalier, no real worries. So I sent off an email to this guy and he basically sends me an email back and he's like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And I'm like, we'll pay you. And he's like, you come on. So we paid him. We paid him money for access into this place, which was not deemed safe by the city or the state.
You could die.
It was in disrepair so bad.
I'll take your money, but you could die.
Exactly. So we go into this place and we have a couple of tour guides that are like, told the stories of the mansion and all that. And they also kind of want to supervise. And so they're telling us, and we've got stories like, oh, Timmy, he has his ball over in this hallway and he kicks the ball and it'll, we'll all be downstairs and you'll hear the ball roll on the ceiling and move to another room.
I remember that place. That was on the MTV show.
It might have been. Yeah. I mean, I know it was covered in a lot of like, so then there was another room where there was like a basement with like one chair alone in the basement where they would stack the bodies. And like, you could go down there and sit in the chair and then they would they would close the room and you would just sit in the cement room and just listen. And you could just like hear, like, it was very creepy. Like, yeah, like I see Rain over there cringing, like, nope.
Like it was that show.
Not my Proton packs.
Yeah. So it was like really, really, really spooky. Upstairs, there was this room that was painted pure black and you could see the stars drawn out on the floor and where the candle wax spots were where stuff had been performed. I mean, it was just like this mansion had it all. like I'm saying, like if you wanted a location to film creepy stuff, this was the one. And so we go in there and this building has no power and nothing. And the lore about this building were nuts. I mean, they said that they disconnected the phone lines and then they would get calls from the house to like the fire department and stuff. They said that they'd disconnect the power and then they would try and do reno work and then like tools would like operate on their own. They'd like install brand new like mirrors and stuff or windows and then they'd come back the next day and everything's busted, but no one had been in it. And they've got security cameras to prove no one had been in it. Like just like all sorts of crazy stuff going on in this place, right? So we go in. Now I'm a broke college student. And you have to premise the story because it just is so bad. I had a 95 Chevy Lumina that was in maybe an accident or two with a crumpled hood. I mean, it was like a piece of crap car, like college student broke crap car, right? We've got no power in this place and I've got to have lighting. So I'm thinking, we could buy a lot of extension cords and a power converter for the car. I'll plug it into the cigarette lighter. We'll run extension cords up into the building, up into the second story of this haunted mansion, and that'll give us lighting. And we'll have lighting to do the shots. Is everyone good with this plan? And everyone's like, it's your car. So I'm like I'm literally running my car, locking the doors and closing the car with a power cord going out the window. This is so not safe in any way. Also, it's a great way to get your car jacked and stolen.
Right.
Like, perfect way to get it stolen.
Power goes out. You see the car just pulling.
Yeah.
Up the driveway, like son of a bitch.
We're up in the second story of this place, and we're in this one room, and I don't remember the name, but they said it was like Angry Mary or Angry Agatha's bedroom or something like that. They said, oh, this room has a lot of activity. When we do our like dowel rod thing, when we come in here with ghost hunters, whatever, she gets really upset. And if you move anything in this room, she just gets really, really upset. So we just advise that you don't really mess with anything. So college student. It's a college student. So they give us this spiel. They stand back. There's a bed. I look at the guy that was voted. I wasn't able to be the casting director. I didn't get to be like, you're this or you're that. It was like, nope, you're in the group and you're the jock. So I guess you're the lead actor. So this guy is like this like roided out big guy. And I look at this guy and I'm like, you're going to wake up in that bed in the shot. So you need to go lay down in that bed. Go lay down in Angry Agatha's bed.
Oh, man.
He looks at me like I've lost my damn mind. And I probably did. To be fair, when you think about these kind of stories, you're like, yeah, no, this is probably pretty bad. So I look at him though at the moment and I'm just like, don't be a wuss. Like, I was like, we're going to do this shot. And so like, I literally, in a college student, I walk over to this bed and I jump midair to land in this bed. Now, about halfway down, I realize this is very stupid. This is a great way. This is a great way to final destination yourself.
Oh my God.
Because this bed was like from the 1800s and like one of those coil spring metal beds with no mattress. And so I'm about to land, like I could be landing on like blades of metal. Like I don't know what I'm about to land on here.
Yeah. Oh.
Like this is a great final destination way. Like you would have made Final Destination. We have the footage. It's like the Blair Witch, but better. Anyway, so
landing on a bed of nails.
It's just like, so I'm midair, right? And I'm like, and meanwhile, as I'm midair going backward into this bed, I see the faces of every person on the crew turn white as a ghost, like they're watching me about to die. They're like either you are going to die or we're all going to die because of you trespassing on the Edgar Athens bed. This is very bad, right? So I land in the bed. Thankfully, nothing happened. This is like, and then I'm like, okay, see, and I'm like, I look at the jock, I'm like, see, like we're gonna be okay. And I get up and I'm like, get in the bed. So let's get this shot. like so we gotta do this, right?
Get in the bed.
Yeah, get in the bed. So we go and we do the shot, and I do actually have footage of this. I can send you all later if you're curious to see what this was. But we go and do this, and we do this shot, and we get what we needed out of that couple of shots, and everything's fine. Nothing's going on. And then it occurs to me, your car is currently running unattended downstairs 2 flights down with extension cords out of it. You should probably check on your car. Like this is how we're getting power and lighting and everything else. So there's this banister and like, it's like a hallway with like a banister. And then there's various rooms, like Victorian rooms off of it. And then there's a stairwell that goes straight down. And then there's like the front door and all the other main rooms are scattered around it in this mansion. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to just run down. So everyone is like standing on that second story at the banister, kind of like leaning on the banister, chit-chatting about the shots or whatever. And I start walking down the stairwell. And as I'm walking down the stairwell, I get about 6 steps down. And I don't know, Could have been just a old busted up stairwell. Could have been a ghost. I don't know. What I do know is what I saw and what everyone on the banister railing saw. And it was a stair literally lifted up, caught my foot, and I dropped about 4 steps down.
Oh,
Just like, don't mess with my stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it was like I caught myself on the railing. I was, and I like look up, and they all look at me like, it was like, okay, we're not touching any more of Agatha's things. So we like moved on.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know?
Next
So,
shot.
that's the spookiest story that story is related to. That I, you know, it's
You would have
like,
loved the college campus I was on, man. It was as I told the girl, the gang last week, the last time of that episode. My campus was literally it was like a fairly famous insane asylum that was in Central Islip. And the building, the main building, I never got a chance to get in it, but I had a lot of friends from Central Islip that would totally be like doing like the director thing, going, shut up, Joe, please, copies, popos, Joe, no. They literally got in there. One of them actually didn't touch the wheelchair, but they saw a wheelchair at the end of the hallway that was like facing the wall. That old school wooden wheelchair with the metal wheels. Yeah, and they were like, "Oh yeah," and then the other friends like, "No, let's go in the room." And they found jackets. They found the old straight jackets on the ground flat. They would find Rain. They went into one room. They didn't touch the machines. They were scared. Those old school things that they would stick against people's heads and like,
oh, the electrodes, yeah,
because it was that kind of cycle ward. Like, it was seriously, yeah.
And the regulations around that stuff were, I mean, frankly, from the 60s earlier, were almost non-existent, right? Yeah. So that was the end of the story of that mansion. Was that mainly they ended up finally demolishing it. Like they had about 4 years after I shot that and was in it. The city used whatever adverse possession or like however the city does its thing where they say, hey, you're not to code. We're now basically using our executive authority to take your land and take your property, and we're going to knock it down for you since you didn't get it to where you should have. And that's what happened to them. But when they were doing it, they found all the paperwork because they still had gurneys in this place from like the actual use, like kind of what you were saying, like. And so they found the paperwork, and there was like so much malpractice on that paperwork. There was a Caro's. I don't know if you remember Caro's back in the day, if that was a thing, but there was a Caro's. It's like a Denny's. Okay. There was a Caro's
or something.
Yeah. There was a Caro's, which is like a Denny's type breakfast place. And it was right next to where the property sat. And I gotta imagine that kitchen got so haunted when they knocked that house down.
I bet, right?
I was like, don't go get pancakes from there because the syrup will float across the restaurant.
like what's that movie that everybody loves, 13 Ghosts? Remember how I used to always think like in like Kevin Hart style, all them ghosts are like walking out of the property. I'm like, man, I feel bad for the motherfuckers that have the house right next door to that place.
Oh, man.
Like,
it's just
mommy, there's a giant guy with a freaking like spikes coming through my bedroom. Like what did like a few days later have some little kid sleeping, and all of a sudden you see the fucking spiked guy that was the train guy just walk by in your house. You're just watching TV and you're like, oh.
That's the other thing too, is like real estate people. Like I mean, you know, they're going to eventually, I don't know if they've already done it. I haven't done my research on that regard, but like at some point that's going to get turned into like, cause there's shopping centers on all the other corners. That's going to become real estate at some point that somebody decides, okay, let's turn this into something else. Boy, the tenants that don't know what they're getting into.
like Central Islip too, where I used to live. The cycle ward got the building got destroyed, demolished, and they got rid of the building, and they built added to the community that my uncle lives in Long Island, in Park Row. And all I was telling my friends were like, oh, they cleared everything. And the people that I'm friends with that are deep into the paranormal, they were texting me, oh, they got rid of it. And I texted them, please tell your family and friends don't buy an apartment in Park Row. You'll have a fucking straitjacket crazy ass over your bed going,
So have any of you guys
story of Poltergeist, right? Because they built over they moved the bodies. And that's
you moved the headstones, but you didn't move the bodies.
Move the bodies, right.
Did you guys either of you been to Old Town San Diego before?
No.
Oh gosh,
I'm from the East Coast. I'm from San Diego.
So, when I lived down in SoCal, I got to do a little bit of time in San Diego, and I really love Old Town San Diego. Old Town San Diego is like the 1800s, and I think maybe even earlier, like Spanish missions, like Spain's still fighting over territory in the US, kind of an area. It's just such a culturally cool spot. You have a huge amount of Hispanic cultural emphasis in that area, but you also have just all of the different things like the missions that were happening to try and colonize the area. And so Old Town San Diego is like this like quartered off spot of San Diego where all of the buildings are all of those historic like 1800 the railroad came through here kind of buildings. And there's like a hotel that's supposedly haunted. They do tours. It's great. The Whaley House, that's a big one that gets a lot of people know about the Whaley House being like one of, I think Time said it was like America's most haunted house. The Whaley House is out there. Anyway, so the reason I bring all that up is because it's a lot of people in San Diego will say like that is a very, very haunted area. And the reason is because it's just wild. Like the courthouse was there. They'd like hang people. And then they're like, let's build our family home where we hung people. And then like stuff goes on. So the Whaley House is this like super haunted house, right? And it's like historic and all this other. And then there's like an outhouse for it behind. In the decision-making for Old Town San Diego and the civic ownership of such as a historic site, they decided that the Cajun restaurant that's right next door to the Whaley House would have their bathrooms in the outhouse for the Whaley House. And that's where they decided to install their plumbing and like have a key. So my wife and I are having dinner in Old Town San Diego. And like, okay, you know, gotta use the restroom. And they're like, oh, here's the key. And they're like, hand this like thing dangling big thing on a key ring, kind of, you know, like here's your ball and chain and key, you know, right? So we go, you know, it's like, all right. And then you go into this restroom and it's like equivalent of like retrofitted 1800s concrete pad, like just not really outfitted bathroom, but you just whatever. Okay. So it was like cold and murky and damp in there and weird, whatever. So then later we go into the Whaley House and we take the official tour. They're like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other. And they tell us the story of everything. And then they're like, and then you look out this window and there's the outhouse for the old Whaley House. And we're like, oh yeah, we know because we got the restroom key at the restaurant. They go, oh, how did it feel in there? We're like, what do you mean? Like, that's where the daughter shot herself. And she's said to haunt her from this day. She committed suicide in that very restroom. Like, they could have told us that at the restaurant.
Right.
So Old Town San Diego also has like I said, this mission element to it of the old Spanish missions that were there. And they have an old cemetery, like a really old cemetery. But it's been like made really nice, and like they do the Dia de los Muertos like celebrations there, with like, you know, all of the candles and all the vibrant colors. It's just really beautiful. But there are businesses all up and along the street there. And so we take a tour of that area one day, and when we're taking a tour of that area, they're like, so here's the deal. We kind of the city kind of made this a touristy area before we really did our research. You know where the story's going already.
Yep.
They're like, you see the medallions in the street and on the sidewalk, they're little gold medallions. We had a survey group come out and they scanned like Jurassic Park status where you like fire the thing down and then like get the little view finder of like what's down there. They're like, yeah, every one of those medallions is a body.
No.
Like, whoa, you did not, you built over a graveyard. You really did it. You crazy people. like
Damn,
so
not
there's
know
a
that.
building that's right across from the Old Town San Diego cemetery that was like a printing company. They were like, oh yeah, we make like posters and business cards and all that kind of stuff. They moved out in like 3 months.
Jeez.
Because apparently there was so much activity in the building because it's sitting on graves
Right.
that quite literally like it disrupted their business. And so like this poor building owner, like every time I had gone out there, I just saw big like for rent signs because they could never keep a tenant more than a couple months because it was just such a haunted spot. Anyway, Old Town San Diego. Just thought that'd be interesting to talk about.
That's crazy. Wonder if the rent's cheap there.
I know, right? What you would, it's like there is the skeptic part of you is like, is there business to be done here? Could we move in and just like it'd be cool and like nobody cares and like nothing happens and everyone's just freaked out about it? Or it could be the opposite and you could go running and screaming out like Nicolas Cage from the house that was in New Orleans that he had for a while. I don't know if you know that story, but
No, I didn't know that story.
okay, so there's what's it called? The TV show that was like going on forever.
The Simpsons?
No, horror themed. It was I'm blanking in the moment. But it's the oh god, I forget. Horror Story. No, what was it? I forget the name of it now. This is terrible. A terrible moment live on streaming. Anyway, someone's gonna be like, "Oh, here, what is?"
That's like pretty much not what Joe does every fucking time I say something dumb, and then it comes up on StreamYard.
Oh, it's like American Horror Story. There you go. American Horror Story. There you go. I was like Horror Story. I was like trying to find. I was like, where is the name for this? So American Horror Story. So there's been like a bazillion seasons of that show, right? And apparently, one of the episodes in one of the seasons centered around this particular house, which is in New Orleans, which is a very true story and a very horrific story. I only found out about this because earlier this year, we took a vacation in New Orleans because we like food and we also like spooky things. And so we went out there and they were given tours and this house was like horrific. Like basically the story of actually, I'm going to back up. Before I tell you the story of this house, I'm going to tell you what Nicolas Cage's story. Okay. So Nicolas Cage has this house knowing everything I'm about to tell you. And he's like, that sounds like a great place to move into.
Oh, no.
And he does. And I don't know if you remember, but in the news, there was like, I don't know, a couple years back, like he had a dispute with the New Orleans Police Department because he was like supposedly a disorderly conduct drunken in the street. I don't know if this rings a bell, but there were a couple years ago, Nick Cage had some moments in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So the description in the news at the time was like, oh, he probably just got smashed and was having a bad time. Yeah. I'm going to give you the theory running in New Orleans. The theory running in New Orleans is that he was haunted so badly that he straight up ran out of that house and was just yelling crazy shit. Like that was like the like New Orleans way of being like, no, this house is pretty freaking haunted. And once I tell you the story, you'll understand exactly why.
So it's like his Amityville Horror.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So this story, basically, there was a woman who was like super influential in town and she had a ton of money. And she has this big mansion, basically like 2-3 story mansion place in the middle of New Orleans. And it's in like the old French Quarter area. And she would throw balls and like parties, and like everything you would imagine that to be. And she was real spiteful. She was really petty, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Like when you kind of think about this, she would like find out what women in town through the gossip chain like wanted to wear a certain dress and whose husband couldn't afford to buy it for her. And then she would show up to parties in those dresses, like just I have the ability and you don't. Like, he was just like awful person. We already know this is not a great character. This is not a good person. Yeah. So in essence, what the way this goes is that she had slaves. She had slaves that were servants, and there was a party that was going on, and somebody, I think one of them had like spilled something. And I'm probably botching this story, so historians will go look this up and correct me. But the short version is basically somebody made a mistake, and they were terrified that they had made a mistake as a servant of this woman, and they basically were like, I need help, I need help, and they like basically got the police to come, and the police come, and she's like, I can't be here anymore, I can't be here, I'll go up in the attic and you'll never hear from me again. And they're like, the police are kind of like, what do you mean you'll go up in the attic and never be heard from again? And this woman is like, she'll kill me. I've known servants that have made mistakes and they go up and I hear their screams and they'll never come out. Like, I can't go up there. I can't go up there. So the local authorities in New Orleans go up into this attic, and what they find is like people dead, half dead, like organs splayed, like all sorts of crazy stuff in this house. And the end of the story is that basically, like, it comes out that she did all this stuff, and just like every wealthy person without accountability, she just like catches a ferry out of the New World and just goes off to Europe somewhere and just straight up disappears. No accountability for all that she did.
Oh,
So this house is like a horror house. People were murdered, like butchered in this house. Nicolas Cage bought this house knowing this, knowing everything I just told you, and lived alone in this house. Like, and so when he came running out into the street, supposedly non-sober, screaming obscenities and this, that, and the other, apparently word on the street is he was like referencing some people from that situation.
Wow.
And so the current state of that house is he sold it, and somebody offshore, I don't know what country, but somebody who's a super hyper million billionaire, whatever, offshore, went ahead and picked the property up at a discounted rate from Nicolas Cage and furnished it, and goes in and comes like once a year and visits it. But otherwise it sits completely empty, furnished, alone.
Jeez.
Nobody goes in there. And so all the tour guides in New Orleans that are like talking about it are like, we kind of like to think that like maybe when she died, her spirit got stuck here and she has to like stare out the windows, the world around her changing, but she can never leave the house. Like, that's kind of the way that they like deal with the like trauma of this house.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Imagine that. Like, you're stuck in the house and you're watching outside everything change from buggies to like now cars and
cars.
Oh my God. Like,
yeah. It's wild. So anyway, that's the story of Nicolas Cage in that house. Anyway, I'm giving you all sorts of fun stories today.
I really hope Nicolas.
This is great. Like, I want to grab some s'mores around the campfire and listen to more ghost stories.
So I toured I think it's Lafayette 1 is the big cemetery out there, and oh no, I'm sorry, St. Louis Cemetery. It's on my wall. I referenced the wrong one. Anyway, he has built himself a pyramid in the cemetery. He has a pyramid. You can see photos of it. But apparently it's where he will be entombed when he dies. He built it in advance. And so apparently how you do this is you make a sizable donation to the Catholic Church. And then you find someone who already has a familial plot in the graveyard and buy their land rights to that plot. And so I guess he worked out some contract with someone who was willing to sell the familial rights to their land for that specific spot with a nice donation to the Catholic Church. And under such pretense could then erect a stone pyramid that he will future be buried in. When he filmed the latest one where he was a vampire,
Yeah, I
God.
know what you're talking about. It had
I'm
Nicholas
having like brain fog today,
Yeah,
man.
no, but it had Nicholas Hoult in it. I liked it. I thought it was fun.
Um,
Oh, was it?
anyway, so when
It
Dracula.
was the servant.
yes,
What was it? Renfield.
Dracula.
Renfield.
Dracula?
So when he filmed Renfield, they have press photos of him visiting his own gravesite. Like he went and he like checked out and was like, yeah, that'll do. But he has a pyramid. Yes, Nicolas Cage. And also, I will say, I'm going to plug this just because it was so good. If you've not seen Long Legs, please see Long Legs.
Long legs?
Have you not seen this?
No, what is it?
God. Okay.
Sounds like a porno.
Women with long legs, but that's
no, it kind of does. So, Nicolas Cage as I don't want to give it away. Anyway, the gist of it is that like Nicolas Cage is a not great guy. And he's almost like channeling that Heath Ledger-esque from The Dark Knight. Like just in like being crazy and really freaking weird. And you're like, this guy's a serial killer. Like unrecognizable as Nicolas Cage. Not kidding. Wow. And this movie came out in theaters. You can actually rent it on Amazon or wherever it is now. It's actually, you can like watch it tonight if you wanted to, but basically, I won't give the plot away. The opening scene is this little girl coming out of her home in the snow, and all you hear is this like high register voice range of Nicolas Cage talking in like falsetto at this child, and they film Nicolas Cage from like the belly button down, so you don't see him like up, and he like addresses this child, and then like the title screen goes all solid red, like splash of red and like black lettering, Long Legs, and that's how this movie starts. Like it's just the creep. Like if you want to see a really creepy movie, watch Long Legs. It's the one of the only movies I've seen in the last, I would say 2 years, maybe 3, where there's what you see when you watch it the first time, and then if you go back and you watch it a second time, every conversation takes on a double meaning. Every scene, you're like, oh crap, it's over there. I didn't see that. Like the first time, like there was one scene where like literally the creepy situation covers half the screen at the movie theater. I didn't realize it was even in the shot. It was just the second time I watched it, I was like, oh my God, that's there. like, so if you like those kind of movies, go check out Long Legs.
Long Legs, all right.
I like women with long legs.
I like this Five Nights at Freddy's kind of revamp or like fake take on it. That was the one I thought was funny. He only said like 5 lines in the entire movie.
Yes. It's not that silly. It's not that silly. This one's like, okay, so Patrick from our Portland Ghostbusters group.
Yes.
I took him to go see it after I'd already seen it the first time. And I took him to see it. And his comment afterward was, he said, that is the best movie I've seen all year.
Wow.
And then he started scheming with me about how we could get Jen to go see it. And he was like, well, she's going to need to drink first. And then, like
a lot.
So it was funny because like my wife actually went and agreed to see it twice. Wow. I think Jen saw it twice now. Like it was fun. I don't want to play it up too much because it's not, I mean, like every movie has its flaws, right? We don't take things too seriously, but very entertaining. Very, like, I did not expect that from Nicolas Cage. There are a lot of things I expect from Nicolas Cage. That movie was not one of them. So
that's cool.
A little bit, he's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, yes. Referencing the prior story about living in a crazy house. Yeah. So yeah.
No, I can see where your stories come from. You have this great knowledge of like horror and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to I take what I know that people believe are real. Whether or not I believe in specifics is kind of irrelevant. It's more of, what I know that someone has said, okay, this is authentically real to them. And then I've written kind of along the line. So a lot of my stories are pop culture horror, ghosts, vampires, fun stuff, things that
Sure.
you would actually love. I stay away from explicit sexual themes, and I stay away from intense gore. Those are two things that I just like. I'm like, these aren't fun for me, and I think for a lot of the population, there are genre and niches for everyone. So that's Running Chills. Running Chills is a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Where do you see the future of it going, or where would you like it to go?
If I could have where I want it to go, I would love for me to turn it into screenplay and push. I mean, I really do feel like, sometimes you see stuff that's created and you're like, who wrote this? You know what I mean? Like you see what makes it, and it's like, okay, Hollywood nepotism at its best.
Yes.
You get green light for the screen, and it's like, oh, this is a terrible script. And I really feel like I could turn some of these characters and content into good. If you saw on Netflix Cabinet of Curiosities with Del Toro, if you've seen Black Mirror, if you've seen anything that's got that like Twilight Zone-esque heritage to it, there used to be, actually, if you remember, Night Gallery with Rod Serling.
Night Gallery.
Yeah. So like in
Outer
that
Limits.
vein, I really do feel like something like Running Chills could do great. Personally, I love Running Chills because when I write it, I'm playing with ideas. And so in essence, I'm like incubating ideas and seeing what works and what doesn't. And then the things that work go into the book. The things that worked really well become novels of their own. And the things that didn't get, I tried that. I played with that. I worked that through. So, that's where I would love for it to go. Having said that, man, making the podcast and producing it has been a lot of fun. Stay tuned. I'm really trying hard. We're recording this week, and then I'm also doing the book tour. So we'll see if it happens, but I am hoping to release a new episode on October 31st. So
nice.
Stay tuned. If you like clowns, this might be the one for you.
So, Rip, with me being like a podcaster as well, do you have any do you have any questions for us? Because I never get a chance to ask us the questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like flip the tables on you guys. Yeah. I would say, I'm just curious. One of the things that I've had questions on from those that have been in it has been just marketing strategies that you found useful, because everyone's got kind of their own angle. A lot of my stuff has been in person through the book tour and whatnot, but I'm just curious, how others have marketed their podcast and whatnot, what you've seen work.
Well, with me doing this show for 8 years, this show was just a blip for me, because I would be working in my store that that store that has a little anus as a logo. People went to it like zombies. Oh, well, I would work at a place and I would literally tell them, hey, do you like Ghostbusters? Oh yeah, why? I do a show called Ghost Head Talk. And they're like, yeah, right. I'm like, look it up. Oh shit. And they look up my old logo, it's just me like this. And they're like, because my original name on YouTube was Joe the Greeter.
Right.
And I would get them by standing like this as they like look up Joe the Greeter. And they're like, fuck you, Joe. And I'm just standing there like this because the logo is just me like this.
Yeah.
So like I would literally tell people, but now when it became Ghost Head Nerd Talk, instead of saying, "Would you like Ghostbusters?" my go-to word was, "Do you like nerd culture?"
Yeah.
And also now being on Instagram, and Instagram's another like key way to grab people by seeing, and hashtags. Hashtags could be your best friend. It could be what's the word, Rain? Pick your poison. Am I right? Is that the word?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I've heard hashtags could be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This podcast for me has grown in such a good way because, as I said before we were live, my shows used to be just me talking to my laptop with no ring light, no background, just pitch black, and just me talking into my computer. And now it's just, I have a partner. Val's not with us today. She's a busy lady, but 3 of us, and it feels like now that I have Val and Rain, it's changed to a different style because it's not just one person promoting it. Rain promotes it when she does her gigs. Val promotes it through her Ghostbusters community and telling people. I'm literally, I feel like I'm walking up to people going, "Do you like our culture? Follow me in this room. Let's go. Gotta show you something." Rain, get the lights. Val, get the bat. Where's jeez. Rocket, make a sound. Watch the door. Bark if you hear something. Like, no, don't bark randomly.
Come, children, come.
It's like, hey, Rain, hey, Rain, lure the children. We need, and then that's when I got made another Twitch, and I'm like, get the children.
That's so funny. That's awesome.
It's just like, and then the guy that did my Ghostbusters logo, he made a logo for me and Rain that it was originally Ghostbusters, and then the second logo, I was thinking like nerd culture, and I was like, what's the coolest movie that was in the 80s that everybody loved? Mm-hmm. Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. And I gave my buddy Joe Alphabet the like sprinkle of idea, and he came back with Back to the Future. Like,
I just found out.
Made you the doc.
I'm really excited. I just found out. So I'm doing a book tour. I'm going back to New Orleans because I loved it. Honestly, if these stories didn't already tip you off to that, I have more, but. I really loved it. And so I'm like, well, I should go do a book event out there. It gives me an excuse to be out there and then write it off. You know what I mean? And so I'm going back out there for Fan Expo in January. And
cool.
They have booked the entire cast of Back to the Future for a reunion.
What?
No way. Oh, that's awesome.
It's got Michael J. Fox. I mean, everyone's there. Like it's they've even got Biff there. Like they've got them all. And I'm just like, the photo opportunity for that is going to be insane. To have them
giving you a
all in
noogie
one
and saying butthead. like
it's wild. I just found out today. Like, I don't know if they announced it recently. Maybe I somehow missed that, but I was like on the website. I was like, what? Oh, that's awesome. Like, so
that's cool.
Anyway.
Need to come to our Fan Expo here in January.
Oh gosh, man. I was supposed to be at the one this last year, and then we had that crazy winter storm.
The ice storm. Yeah.
I heard there were vendors that were like just setting up under their tables, calling it a night. Like it was like
bad.
Stay where you are. Like it's bad.
Oh.
Yeah, we our team met Danny Trejo, but I wasn't able to get in because of the ice. So, but yeah, I was like, Dan. Of course, the one time I'm not there, we have an awesome celeb come by the booth. It was cool.
Hey, we had a really great time this year. We so Rain and I got to meet Patton Oswalt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
at Rose City this year, and he signed both our packs. I think
we were lucky.
The only ones with the signed packs, I think. Or were
I think so. Yeah, because he was just like, I'm not signing anything else unless it's his brood picture that was there.
Yeah, so we got lucky.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he did sign our Paul's Ecto Dash.
Okay, he signed the Ecto.
He literally had to take it out and take out of our Ecto. He's our guy who owns our big Ecto, and to actually literally pull the dash pad out of his car and brought it over to him so he could sign the part of it.
That's so awesome. I have a strategy.
More the Ghostbuster actors that come to our.
I think I have a strategy for how I'm going to get the rest of the pack signed. I think they make for the HasLab, they make metallic label stickers for the various parts to make them look metallic, like brushed metal, and you can order them in like sticker sheets off like Etsy. And so I think I'm going to take a sticker sheet, and then the next time I'm at an event and any of them are there, it's like, hey, sign this sticker. Hey, sign that sticker. And then at some point I'll have a completed sheet full of the stickers, and then I'll swap them all in the Proton Pack, and they will have all signed the Proton Pack.
Damn. Oh, that's an awesome idea. That's a really cool idea. Yeah.
Then you don't have to like
You're not
bring
carrying
the
a proton
proton pack to every event.
Yeah, across country or wherever. Yeah.
Like,
Because
oh,
I
no,
think
no, no.
Ernie Hudson, the last time he was in our neck of the woods was 2017, is what I heard.
Yeah.
So it's
He
been a
was down
while.
in I only know this because I was looking at book places to tour this year. I think he's on the East Coast right now at some horror convention. I want to say Florida, but I could be wrong.
Gosh,
But
Florida.
a couple of them
That is
are
the worst part.
yeah, I'm doing next weekend Washington State HorrorCon.
Wow.
And so that's going to be really fun. They booked Elvira. Elvira will be there.
Oh, cool.
And then they got the younger cast of Hocus Pocus. So the kids and Binks the Cat, who also is Max from Goofy Movie for the 90s fans.
Oh, yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so so they're all there. They did have Kiefer Sutherland until like 2 days ago.
Oh.
Kiefer Sutherland was like booked because they were going to have a Lost Boys reunion.
Yeah, I was gonna say they would have been cool.
The entire cast, and Kiefer was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." And then something happened on his production, and they basically told him he couldn't leave. And then he was like, he sent out this video. It was so sad. I open up like Instagram, and I see from Washington State HorrorCon a video. It's the saddest Kiefer Sutherland video I've ever seen. He's very sad and remorseful, and he's sitting on his hotel bed, and he goes, "I'm so sorry, I can't make it." And I'm like, "You forced this man to shoot this video on his bed? Oh my gosh!" Anyway,
could have been at a desk. What the hell?
I know, man. It's like, damn it, Chloe. Anyway, but sorry, 24 reference. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's, and then I mean, there's a couple other like really great actors. I know I'm forgetting people left and right, but it should be a really fun. They're the guys that normally do SummerCon up in Washington, and they usually have a really good slate of actors. And so I'm pumped to see it's their very first year doing a horror themed one. So I'm curious to see what the event will turn out like, but it should be fun.
Awesome. Yeah. You're doing your book tour up there, right?
Yeah. So I'll do like my booth setup. I have I've been experimenting like just like, some authors, they show up and it's like books and here's my banner and that's it, and that's kind of how they show up. I envy these people because their setup is like 30 minutes and their teardown is like 30 minutes. I'm the crazy who like shows up with a 4-hour setup and I'm like building animatronics in my booth behind me. like I have like a haunted tree and stuff in my setup and like custom lighting and like I go all out and I like do all this stuff. And the question is like, does that move the needle? Like do people go, wow, that's really awesome, I'll buy your book? Or they're just like, wow, that's really awesome. And then they just go to the next booth.
This is for a book. Oh, gotta go.
yeah. The jury's out. I have been making improvements over time to make it a little more sustainable. But yeah, for the ones I travel further than like say I can take in my vehicles, I did do LA HorrorCon and I had like a camper trailer and I just threw all the gear in it, and so I was able to still do my full setup. But if I start going Midwest to East Coast, it's like there's just the time involved and the cost of moving all that stuff, and it's like show up and put some books on the table, you're gonna be fine. so yeah, so that's kind of what it's like.
Well, if I was gonna say, for those watching who don't know, I mean, how committed Rip is, his house is mega decorated and he has like over hundreds of people that show up to it all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
we're
a
little crazy. We're a little crazy. We slimmed down a little bit this year, but not by much.
So you're that house on the block, pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah. They put out the big one this year was Home Depot put out the Night Dullahan, which is like the German version of the Headless Horseman. Like apparently Washington Irving's Headless Horseman is actually an American take on an original German legend. So
really?
Fun Halloween fact, kids. The Night Dullahan was the original Headless Horseman. What is the difference? Well, the American version is like knighted looking guy, Victorian kind of looking guy riding a horse. Maybe it's a darker horse with red eyes or something, but it's just like a regular horse. And then he's got a pumpkin for a head, right? And he goes running around like the Disney Channel version of it, where he goes and Bing Crosby sings about it. And
that's how I learned about that story was that movie. With,
right. Yeah, it's
Toad.
Bing
It was
Crosby,
yeah.
come on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so that's the American version. The German version is like the horse is a skeleton he's riding. So like, and like he himself is a skeleton, and his head is a skull in his hand instead of a pumpkin. It's a little more hardcore. Anyway, so anyway, they released Home Depot released a big 8.5-foot Knight Dullahan.
Wow.
It's animatronic. Like the horse kicks back and the skull talks and sways in the guy's hand. And all this other. And I was like, that. so I set that
I
up.
didn't even see that yet. I'm gonna have to look at the.
Oh yeah, dude, you got to look at the Home Depot ads on that. It's pretty cool. I put it on my front yard, and we got this neighbor kid, and the neighbor kid just goes. He just is like in awe of it. He then like came over. This is actually really cute. He came over like the next day, and he's like, he saw my setup. He comes, come over to my yard. I set up. He asked his mom to take him to the dollar store, and they got little foam tombstones. And so he's like set out little foam tombstones in his yard, little cobweb, little spider here. He's like, look, I did my yard, and I'm like, you did so well. He's 4. You did so well. Don't be intimidated by Knight Dullahan.
Right.
Everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, like you did so well, kid. That feels like everybody making fun of Ghost Head Talk. You did so well. Shut up. You did, it's like here we go. It's like Joe Pan the Third. Every time I mention Ghost Head Talk, he's like, you did so well. Good job. You suck, Ghostbuster.
That's not what. That's not.
And then I'm just like, I was like, I'm trying so hard. He's just like,
Jorge though. It's so funny though because it's like it is true. Like you see kids, they love to model what they see in adults. Yeah. And this neighborhood kid like saw me set this stuff up, and his mind just went, oh, like this is what I want. So I've made a future horror fan. So there you go.
That's awesome. Well, it's like when we do cons, we have the little kids that come up sometimes with the homemade Ghostbuster stuff, and I applaud them so much, but they look at our gear and they're like, does that really work? Because it looks so realistic. And I, and they're like, my stuff isn't as good as yours. I'm like, no, yours is awesome because you built that. It doesn't have to be as cool as ours. Yeah. It's still just as awesome because you built that. You took the time to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to look like this. It's just as awesome. So
I love that. Like, I don't compete with Rain's gear. Her gear is like, there's like where I am. Like I'm the kid putting the styrofoam.
Your stuff is cool.
Rain would look at my pack that my dad did and be like, "Big Joe, you did a good job."
Yeah, exactly.
Put it in the car. If you saw the way if Rain saw my pack, he'd be like, "Aw, Big Joe, I like the little paint job. So cute. Aw."
Well, I tell people I wasn't setting out to make it like that cool. It just came that way. And I tell this because usually people, most guys can relate to it, but it's like I took the Full Metal Jacket approach. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And that was all I wanted it to be. And then I didn't realize how crazy, it was compared to, I thought there were other things out there that probably looked just as good, but apparently no, mine went really crazy out. And then I was just decided I'm going to 3D print this. I'm going to 3D print that because I really wanted the detail on it. That's what I really always wanted to do. And it's just funny.
Okay, so as an aside, as someone who's witnessed Rain in these moments, it's very interesting to see the reactions to the smoking and the twisted marshmallow response that they get when they smell it. It's two kinds of people. I've seen both responses. The first is like excitement, amazement, and adoration. And the other is like, who brought a vape pen in here?
Yes.
like offended. You're like, no, it's part of the, and they're like,
I got because when my smoke blows out, I put the marshmallow smell in it. So, because they're like, marshmallows. I'm like, yeah, Stay Puft, stay on brand. And they're like, oh my God, how'd you think of that? Like, well, I mean, just
so I could see Rain's face because she always has that shocked, sweet little face. She does like this.
Yeah.
It's usually most of my pictures. My partner says that, like, why do you make that face and everything? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, because I let them hold like the wand, and I'm just like
Yeah, yeah.
just for fun, you know.
That's my
Because I
favorite
wear.
thing.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's like my favorite thing. Like I did a bust for my local theater, the local theater by my house. They the girl found out I'm a Ghostbusters cosplayer, and like they invited me, and there was a little girl that saw me with my gear on. They said, Joe, come out, and the girl saw me. I was like, sorry, like talking to mom, and I was like, the mom's like, oh, Joe. So we took a picture, and I said, we were taking the picture, and I said, hold the trap, and she's like, I'm like 5'1". This little girl had been like this tall. Like, it's not standing, but you know, I'm 5'1". So she's like, I'm like, hold it. And she's like, and she's holding the trap. And then she was just like sitting there all like looking all defiant, shoulders all up. She's like, and then I looked at her and I gave her a pound and I said, before you walk away, before you go, and I was like, I'm the founder of the group, as you know, Ghostbusters of Pike County is my franchise. And I said, you are officially a junior Ghostbuster. That little girl jumped 10 feet in the air. It was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, mom, oh my God, oh my God. And she like ran. And I'm like, good thing I like gave her, like, good thing she gave back the trap. She would have been like, this is like a handmade trap. Would have snapped the handle. She's like, oh my God, mom, oh my God, I'm a Ghostbuster. And her mom's like, so sweet. And she went like this. I'm like,
Those are the moments that make it worth it. Yeah, we get a
Yes.
lot that too. Yeah, it's
she
so
saw
much
me
fun.
at a gear and she's like, I know you. And I'm like, Ghostbusters. And she went like this. The mom's like, and she went, the little girl's face went. It's like seeing Santa Claus in a Hawaiian shirt and during July. And she was like,
It's funny with Ghostbusters. You get sometimes more adults than kids that recognize us, and when they see the car, they melt, and then they're like walk through the booth, and then we do a demo of the containment unit, and they're like, "Oh my God!" It's like, yeah, their little kid comes out. It's really cool to see.
It's very fun.
it's funny. The mom's like, oh my God, you're the Ghostbuster guy. And I was like, yep. I had the hat on my knee. I had my Ghostbusters Pike County hat. I caught my truck, my Pike County trucker hat. I didn't have my Ecto chewing tobacco. Yeah, that's us, Ghostbusters Pike County. We lost a lot of members that year. What? Oh yeah, we remember Little Pike County Ghostbusters. We have a very small franchise. I have to like keep my pack like double plugged in so the power doesn't go out. You know, we all fam in the club. Yeah. But yeah.
So speaking of Ghostbusters, one quick last question. Where do you see the franchise going now? With now that Frozen Empire's done so well, we got all this other stuff. What would you like to see the franchise, or where would you like to see it go?
Ghostbuster Joe, you want to take this one first?
No, I meant you.
Oh, you and me. Oh, on the spot. Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, I would love to see them stay close to their roots. I know it sounds like a weird like statement, but what I mean by that is when you watch the original movie, because of the era and the time in which it was made, it was heavy on synth music and 80s, and it just had a certain aesthetic to it that was like the everyman, you know?
Yeah.
And or the everyman and every woman now. But it had that, like, it was very approachable, like a blue collar person who like worked in, you know, various jobs like electrical. You know, when they saw Ghostbusters 2 and the guys are arguing in the middle of the street while digging in the street, they're like, I can identify with that. Like,
Right.
I've had that argument and it wasn't over slime. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just that level of like approachability. And then also you're talking about a majority SNL cast that like were able to collaborate in such a way that they understood the comedy of their time. And there was an interesting quote in that magazine that I have, that's a Ghostbusters themed magazine that came out 2-3 months ago that was only Ghostbuster content. And it said that when they did Ghostbusters 2, they were kind of sad toward the end because they felt like Batman came out under Tim Burton, and they felt like the zeitgeist of the moment had changed. They felt like people wanted dark and serious. And they were like, but that's not us. That's not Ghostbusters. That's not what we did. And so they felt like Ghostbusters 2 in some ways was a miss because the audience wanted Batman. And when you think about it from a time perspective, it's like, well, we didn't even get to things like The Dark Knight, where it got even more serious and more realistic. And we want authentic stories and drama that's really drug out. And like, we want to see like shows like The Penguin, where it's like really dark and all this, like, but that's not Ghostbusters. You know, at the end of the day, Ghostbusters was a bunch of regular guys who were like, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. What are you doing? Like, you know, just kind of doing their thing. And they're like underdogs, and they come from education, but like, they're kind of crazy, and it's always the quiet ones, you know, and it's just kind of like, you know, I mean, it's just like that level of approachability. I would love for the franchise to continue that. I think the thing that was really great about Afterlife and the thing that was really great about Frozen Empire is that it did introduce younger characters that would then draw in a new generation, because we were in danger of becoming an IP where only adults of a certain age would know what Ghostbusters was. And, you know, prior to, I would say maybe 2014, Ghostbusters was starting to kind of get dusty, if you get what I mean. Like, for us, we knew what it was, but there's what I call the Tom Sawyer Island effect, which is where at Disneyland kids would walk by and you'd go, Tom Sawyer Island, and they go, who's Tom Sawyer?
Right.
And that is kind of the danger that we were in prior to all the new movies that started coming out. The good news is we've onboarded those kids now. We see 5-year-olds who recognize immediately when you're in uniform what we are. The problem is that we could fall into more of a Disney Channel trap as a franchise, where we focus on kids leading the stories or tweens leading the stories, and we don't go back to the roots of it just being regular people. So I'm interested to see our main characters in the last movie grow up. I'm interested to see them as adults, like having a drink, going, man, today was messy, and here's why. Like, I'd love to see that. Like, and then we can introduce more kids and more younger stuff, you know, in 20 more years. And like the next generation can pick it up from there, you know. But I'd love for us to return to those roots. I think
that's a really cool take. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my take.
No, that is a really cool take. That does make sense, because you if you have too much of the younger generation, it feels like it's more catering to them and not us who grew up with it, right? And it's like, I don't know, but it's like it's hard to know, because we obviously, the actors now, they're in their 70s and 80s, you know, and they don't want to. I know Dan Aykroyd said he'll go, you know, keep doing it. I'm sure Ernie Hudson will, but we know Bill Murray probably won't be in the next one. Who knows? But where does that go from there? So, you know, I mean, you have Gary and the mom Callie, right? And then how does that go? Did they hire more people? Because we saw that the British guy who was the engineer that we barely saw, we know he was in there very quickly. You know, do they bring those characters in to now become actual like busters now? You know, so it's that'd be interesting.
I also am, and this is being more on the critical side as someone who writes and stuff, I also would like them to bring in some writers that really polish. Because I mean, if you saw the extra features for Frozen Empire once it was out, you could kind of see how it was a lot of quick reshoots and a lot of moving things around. We'll just call it, you know, to get it under budget. And unfortunately, it's even Ghostbusters 2 in interviews, they talk about how like the guys literally came together and were like, we want 10 million each to be in this. And Sony was like, well, the whole budget's 30 million. So that ain't flying. And at what point then, like Reitman sat them all down and was like, we all have fun. We all hang out, right? We like being around each other. Would you all take a pay cut? You know what I mean? And so that's how GB2, and that's also why the whole Bill Murray thing became what it did, because obviously, you know, Bill was like, wait, this isn't what we agreed to over beers. like, you know, and so that's kind of, you know, I would love to see the writers go deep and you know, make sure that it's a polished experience start to finish. My fear for any franchise, whether I'm talking about Star Wars, whether I'm talking about anything in the Marvel world, whether I talk about any of these other properties, my fear is you get really short budgets, really condensed writer rooms, really just like set, height, go. It's cool. The fans will buy it anyway. And then you just go running headfirst into plot points and moments that don't quite fit in the world, and things start to get rattly, and you get a Harrison Ford like hold together baby moment, you know what I mean? And that's the worry, is that with any IP, like, and you've seen that with Star Wars with like the stumbles around the Acolyte,
Yeah.
where they really like, it was like, oh, maybe we did too much here. Maybe, I mean, we had some good ideas, but like we stepped too far away from the Skywalker side, like, or we did something too risky. And so my worry is, there's an article in the Ghostbusters magazine where they were talking about they wanted to do things from the perspective of Ghost. And this was Reitman, this was Jason talking along with some of the producers for Frozen Empire as potential future work. Now, what we don't know is whether those comments were referencing Frozen Empire specifically, the plotline we saw, or not.
Yeah.
But if they're not, if they're literally saying, hey, we should create a whole movie based on the perspective of ghosts, well, you can kind of already see like my statement about it being about the basics, and how if you get too far out on a limb, now people are like, well, this isn't really what I came for. Like, this isn't the, granted, things can never stay the same, you know, start to finish, but they can stay in the same universe, so to speak. Like, you can still kind of feel like this has the vibe of the original Star Wars, therefore I watch it. Versus, what is this? You know,
that has the name, but it's nothing familiar with it whatsoever.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, long answer.
No, great takes on it. That's actually quite interesting. That was one thing that really drew me to that Spirits Unleashed game, was that you get to play the ghost, you know, because you're always usually the Ghostbuster, you know, running after him, but play from the ghost side.
That is a fun mechanic for sure.
Yeah.
Really,
but I mean, but also it's interesting to see, like, so like in Frozen Empire, we see, you know, the girl's a ghost girl and she's normal, but yet how does Slimer turn into Slimer? You know, was he a person before, and or all these other creatures that were there, you know, are they just things from another dimension? You know, how does the sewer dragon in the beginning of Frozen Empire turn to the sewer dragon? You know,
well, there's also a weird mechanic there from storytelling that bugged me about Frozen Empire. It was one of the things, you know, everyone had their reason for why they didn't like or did like the plot line of, you know, her wanting to be connected to the ghost, and therefore she kind of like pseudo separates her soul from her body, and then that leads to Garaka and all of that. Like, everyone had their own weird takes on why that didn't quite work or why it did. My reasoning for why I wasn't a huge fan of it, granted, I think the movie's awesome. It was fun. Everybody had a great time. Like, I think it continues to promote. So I'm not knocking. But if I was going to be like, get the scalpel out and be like, here's where I would make an incision, my thinking is that the lore problem that creates is, if you're about hunting ghosts and capturing them, creating a dynamic where I have to start feeling empathy for the things I capture creates a reason to not have the Ghostbusters. You're going to start to have a scenario play out where it's like, oh, maybe I don't throw this particle thrower at this person because maybe they have feelings. Well, that's different than a 20-story tall Stay Puft going, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's very different, right? Than like, I have feelings and like, you shouldn't aim that at me, you know. And that was the one thing about it where I was like, ooh, that does introduce a new problem now. Because now we have to like psychologically diagnose the ghost and its problems before we just start putting them in traps. I don't like that dynamic.
Was that what the ghost girl said? Was like, oh, you know, it might match your ghost hunting place or something like that. And yeah, she was staring at the containment unit. Yeah. And she was like, well, I could have captured you. And so that's
I know in pop culture and in like the news, people got hung up on the relationship between the two girls.
Yeah,
that wasn't my concern. My concern was the dynamic of a ghost not being on its face value the thing we need to catch, because that's bad. Yeah, it's like, it'd be like a mouse catcher coming into a house being like, well, how do you feel about the cheese? You know, We really
I want to
need
kill the mouse now,
capture
right?
you right now and take you away. Maybe we just call you Stewie and make you a pet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway.
No, that's
Well,
interesting.
Rip, thank you so much for coming on tonight. So awesome. Before you go, how can my fans find you on the social world? How can they find any of
For
your
sure.
stuff on Spotify?
So, yeah, my social handles are Rip Graven, just RIP, like rest in peace, Graven, GRAVEN. And then the website address is talesbyripgraven.com. And once again, I'll kind of throw up the podcast. Let's see if I can show you. There you go.
Get a little closer there. There you go. There you go.
It's the Running Chills podcast on Spotify. It's very easy to find.
Yeah, the Running Chills podcast on Spotify. And yeah, just kind of go from there. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, you'll enjoy it if you're into all things fun and pop culture horror. This will be up your alley. So I think you got a sense for my humor over this episode and for the comedy. So just know that's kind of my horror writing is dark, but I infuse that comedy. I say horror and comedy are bedfellows. You kind of have to have both to be able to get through a scary story.
That's true.
Well,
anyway. It's tough these days when you think that you're like, I wrote 3 Ghostbusters fan fictions, and I had one of my friends, she read my first one, and she was like, wow, Joe, you really made I never thought of thinking of a Ghostbusters franchise in our little town of Milford, PA. You really gave Milford a heartbeat in in the Ghostbusters world. And the words you used every time, because my favorite word when I see a giant creepy cloud, oh god, I'm gonna remember the word tomorrow. I'm gonna text Rain the word. It's like one of these scary words, these big words I use all the time, and I used it in my story. And my friend's like, and that word you used is kind of like something else. But I'm like, no, it's. I looked it up, and they're like, oh no, you're right. It does mean that. And I was like, well, thank you for correcting me, even though I know what I'm saying. But yeah, thank you very much, Rip, for coming on. Yeah, I'm Ghostbuster Joe. Wait, Rain, what's up?
And I'm Rain. No, I just said thank you.
Okay. And Rain. And
Rip Graven. Good to meet you guys. Thank you again so much for having me on board today.
And don't forget, and as I always say, us ghost heads have a lot to talk about. Good night, everybody.
From Ghostbusters 2,